David, let's go back to the discussion we had just started before the break, and that is about the Supreme Court opening. So Donald Trump says he's a deal maker. We have a real shortage of deal makers in Washington right now, it seems, because there's no deal on the horizon to get that ninth Supreme Court justice approved before this election, is there?
No, there's not. And I think, look, it's very hard for those of us in the media to ever distinguish between the two parties. But I think it's important to say that the Democrats have been more interested in deals in general, and the Republicans have been more interested in standing on principle, or if you don't like what they're doing, in intransigence. And so this is an example, right? It's nearly unprecedented. Some Democrats and some Republicans have said things about this in the past, but we've never had a situation where Congress has actually refused to fill a Supreme Court vacancy because it's the last year of someone's term. And Republicans have said it. And you can understand it. This is an enormously consequential appointment. But Republicans have said, we have no interest in doing this. We're not going to pretend otherwise. And that makes the stakes for this election just incredibly high, because a swing from Scalia to a Democratic appointed jurist, or a swing from Ginsburg or Breyer, who may not remain on the court through the next 4 years, to a Republican one, would have enormous consequences. And the abortion case that you mentioned this week is one example among many.
Yeah, I mean, this is not just a vacancy for Republicans. It's not even just a vacancy of a conservative jurist. This was Scalia, who was an icon to them, and not just for his positions, but the way he would put in zingers in his opinions, calling the opposition liberals, he would use words like jiggery pokery and making things up out of whole cloth. They loved it, and they feel betrayed by so many people who've been put on the court, and then as they see it, betrayed their principles and become liberal. And here's a guy who stood fast, never backed down. He really meant a lot to them. And so the idea of a Democratic president replacing him with a liberal nominee is an emotional issue. And I think it's one of the few issues where they're willing to take a few political hits. I mean, I genuinely believe they'd be willing to lose a couple Senate seats if it meant that they could get a conservative on the bench for the next 30 years. They feel like that would be much more important. So the White House strategy, obviously, understanding this, is to make them pay the biggest price they possibly can. And that's why you're seeing things like them considering this judge from Iowa, who Grassley has praised, who the Senate has approved 96-0, I think. They want to make them pay a price. If they can't persuade them to confirm a nominee, at least they can make them suffer the consequences.
And they are right. This is worth more than 2 or 3 Senate seats for 6 years. It really is.
Well, Molly, as if we didn't understand already how important the Supreme Court